In this video, we're going to break down 4 exercises that you can do to release tension in your pelvic floor as you're preparing for birth or if you're recovering postpartum. Hey, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Gina. I'm the founder and head coach here at MamasteFit, which is a perinatal fitness training company that also offers childbirth education. Our fitness programs are going to help you stay strong throughout your pregnancy, comfortable throughout your pregnancy because pain is not a requirement of being pregnant, and also prepare you for birth. In addition, our programs are then going to help you recover after birth to return to fitness and return to function. Today, we're going to be talking about different exercises that you can do to help release tension within the pelvic floor as you're preparing for your birth or when you're recovering postpartum, because a lot of symptoms that you may be experiencing relating to the pelvic floor postpartum may be related to having too much tension in the pelvic floor as opposed to not enough strength. So first, what is the pelvic floor? The pelvic floor is the sling of muscles here that sit at the bottom of your pelvis. The pelvic floor plays a big role in your daily function and also plays a huge role during birth. First, the pelvic floor is going to help to stabilize your spine. It helps to support your pelvic organs. It helps with lymphatic drainage. It plays a big role in our sexual function to include childbirth, and it plays a big role in sphincter control, so keeping fluid in and allowing fluid to come out. And so we want a pelvic floor that has even tension and tone because uneven tension within the pelvic floor or a lot of tension within the pelvic floor could contribute towards issues such as pelvic girdle pain, incontinence where fluid is leaking out when you don't want it to. It can also contribute towards some issues during birth. And so having an even tone throughout your pelvic floor is going to be really important. And how do we find that? We can find that with different types of pelvic floor release exercises. So first, it's important to note that there's not one movement that is going to stretch the entire pelvic floor, similar to how there's not one movement that's going to open the entire pelvis. And so if you want to learn more about the pelvic levels and the different type of movement patterns that open each pelvic level, check out our YouTube video that breaks that down. And so the pelvic floor is attaching to the pelvis. And so different types of hip movements are going to influence how the pelvic floor is stretching. And so when I have more external rotation of the femurs or wide leg type movements, it tends to stretch more of the front half of the pelvic floor here. But when I have more internal rotation of the hip or knees in, ankles out, it stretches more of the back half of the pelvic floor here. And so if our pelvic floor release exercises only emphasize deep squats and butterfly poses, we're probably going to have a very stretched front half of the pelvic floor, but we're probably going to have a lot of tension back here in our pelvic floor. And so we want to incorporate movements that involve both external rotation, asymmetrical movements, which means one hip is externally rotated and the other is internally rotated, and also internal rotation to kind of target all of the different quadrants of the pelvic floor. So grab a yoga block and we're going to do 4 exercises together. The first movement that we're going to do is probably the most common pelvic floor release exercise that you see, which is going to be the deep squat motion. With the deep squat, you can use a yoga block to provide some support at the bottom of the movement because we do want to be in a supportive and relaxed position. So if holding the bottom of the squat does not allow you to release into it, we want to use some sort of support. And these yoga blocks are nice because you can do different levels depending on your mobility. So you'll take the yoga block and we'll sit down on top of it and the legs will be pretty wide. And again, if you have the mobility and you sit pretty comfortably at the bottom of the squat, feel free to omit the yoga block. So we're going to sit down on top of this yoga block and we'll start in just this position. And then we can just focus on breathing here. And so when I inhale, I want my diaphragm to move down as my rib cage expands. And this is going to increase pressure down onto the pelvic floor. And then I can exhale to just relax. And so I'm going to inhale and then exhale, just relax. Big inhale. You should feel more pressure down into the pelvic floor and then exhale, just release. Depending on the tension within your pelvic floor, you may feel more pressure to the front, you may feel more pressure to the back. Typically, wherever is a little bit tighter, you may feel more sensation there. But for some of us, you may feel more sensation in places that are overly stretched because you're bringing them into even more of a stretch. And so you can just maintain this position and breathe 10 times, or you can add some movement to the hip by pressing both knees out. You can also just press one knee out at a time. And then the last thing we can begin to incorporate within this deep squat movement is we can begin to add some thoracic mobility. The reason why this is important is because our rib cage position influences our pelvic position. And so how our rib cage is oriented can influence how our pelvic floor and how our pelvis can position itself to release tension. And so typically we tend to be a little bit more twisted to the left. And so we may want to incorporate some thoracic mobility or rotation to make it easier for us to find this more externally rotated position so that we can stretch different portions of the pelvic floor. So incorporating thoracic mobility in all of these pelvic floor release exercises can help you release more tension within the pelvic floor as well. So in this deep squat position, we can be supported if you need it. We can focus on spreading the knees apart about 10 times, just one knee at a time to make it a little bit more asymmetrical. And then we can add in some thoracic mobility to help the rib cage position focus on the pelvic position as well. The next movement that we can do is going to be an asymmetrical movement. So you can still sit on your yoga block if you need. I like to bring it to its lowest level. You're going to bring one leg externally rotated in front of you. So knee is going to be coming out. And that back leg is going to come behind you in more internally rotated position. So the foot is behind you, but the knee is in front. Front leg, the shin is fairly parallel in front of you. And so I have my externally rotated leg, my internally rotated leg, and now I'm changing the tension of my pelvic floor in this asymmetrical pattern. So in this position, my left hip is externally rotated and my right hip is internally rotated. So it's going to be shifting my pelvis like this, where the left hip pushes forward and right hip pushes backwards. And so that is going to change the tension within my pelvic floor. This right posterior portion and left anterior portion are going to be stretching a lot more than the opposite side. So in this position, I'm focusing more on right posterior, left anterior as I'm stretching. And so in this position, I can just maintain this. If I feel I have the mobility, I can remove the block to allow myself to move a little bit deeper into it. And you can even just shimmy around and kind of figure out the points that feel more sticky or tense for you. And then again, we can add in some thoracic mobility. So for the squats, we had rotation. For this movement, we could add in some side body opening, because if you recall, the thoracic spine has 3 types of movements. It can go forward and backwards, it can rotate, and it can also laterally bend. So for the lateral bend, you're going to lean towards the internally rotated side or that back leg. And then you're just going to feel this big stretch here in the side body, and it's going to bring you a little bit deeper into this back hip. So you can take big inhale here. Big diaphragm is pushing down into the pelvic floor to feel more of a stretch. And then exhale, let go. Big inhale. Exhale, let go. And then you can do the same thing on the other side. So now the right leg is going to be externally rotated, so it's going to be in front. Left leg is going to be internally rotated behind you. And so the position that we're moving into for the pelvis is going to be right hip is pushing forward, left hip is pushing back, and so it's changing the tension to the opposite. So now left posterior is stretching, right anterior is stretching, and so we've adjusted the tension within the pelvic floor. For a lot of us, this position will be more challenging because the left leg has a harder time to be internally rotated, and the right leg has a harder time in external rotation. And so you may find that this setup is much more challenging than the other side. And same thing, we can add in that side body opener. Typically, right side is more compressed than the left, so you may feel more intensity in this posture as well. And then just breathe here. And so that's an asymmetrical movement that we can do to help release tension opposite within the pelvic floor, and you can do it on both sides, adding in that thoracic mobility. Another asymmetrical movement that we can do is going to target more of that posterior portion of the pelvic floor. And it's going to be an all fours hip shift with pelvic tilt. So we're then going to be adding in that front to back movement of the thoracic spine. So you're going to take the yoga block and you're going to place it underneath one knee in this tabletop position. Then I'm going to shift my weight towards that elevated hip. And so in my tabletop position, I'm shifting my weight over towards this elevated hip. So this hip is going to have less than a 90-degree angle towards it. So I'm not here, I'm shifting my weight over here. And when you do that, you're going to feel more of a stretch back here in the pelvic floor. So now that I'm in this hip shifted position, I'm then going to round in my back, potentially tucking my chin under. And I'm going to feel more of a stretch here in this posterior portion of my pelvic floor, more so on the elevated hip side. And then I'm going to drop the belly down to the floor. So round in the back and then arch in the back. So in this movement, I'm going to be stretching more of this left posterior portion or the elevated hip posterior portion of the pelvic floor. And then I'm adding in that thoracic mobility with the front to back type movement pattern. So we've had the rotation, we've had the lateral side body opening, and now we have the front to back movement of the thoracic spine, so that we're integrating all of that to help us release that tension within the pelvic floor. Because we need more than just our pelvic floor to be stretched. We need to remember that we're a kinetic chain. So different parts of our body are going to help to influence movement or release in other parts of the body as well. And so you can do that hip shifted pelvic tilt on both sides to release tension within that back half of the pelvic floor a little bit more towards one side. The final movement that we can do is going to be focusing on internal rotation of the femur. And this is going to be the hero's pose. So again, you can sit down on the yoga block. You're going to come into a kneeling position with the knees in and the ankles more out. And again, if you have the mobility, you can remove the block and just sit directly down on the floor. It's going to bring you a lot deeper into the posture. And so from here, I have my legs in internal rotation. So this is going to target more of the back half of my pelvic floor. And so from here, I could find a little bit of rounding in my back. So I can find that little bit of rounding in my back, and this is going to help target it more to the back of the pelvic floor. And then I'm just going to breathe here. So big inhale to feel everything kind of move down, and then exhale, just relax. And so this movement is going to target more of the back half of the pelvic floor because of the internally rotated position. And so when we're thinking about releasing tension within the pelvic floor, we want to focus on a lot of different types of hip movements. We don't want to do just deep squats and butterfly poses. We also want to integrate asymmetrical type movements such as that 90-90 position or the hip shifted position. And then we also want to integrate internal rotation at the hips to target more of the back half of the pelvic floor. As we focus on releasing tension within the pelvic floor, we can also integrate thoracic mobility, which is going to help adjust the position of our rib cage, which can influence how we can orient our pelvis, which can influence how we can release tension within the pelvic floor. So remembering that we're a kinetic chain, it's not just the pelvic floor. There's a lot of other components that are going to contribute towards whether or not we're going to be able to release tension within the pelvic floor to support our daily function. If you want more ways to prepare your pelvic floor for birth and also to help it recover in the postpartum period, join our online fitness programs. We offer our online fitness programs in two main formats. The first is going to be in the Team Builder app, which is going to be a list of exercises with short demo videos. This is going to be a more traditional style of workout delivery. The equipment is pretty minimal. You need some weights. You need long bands with an attachment point, such as a door anchor, which is a great home gym option. We need glute or mini bands, and then also a step-up surface. Some of our programs do require a little bit more equipment, such as our longer prenatal program and our gym-based postpartum program, but all the equipment is listed on our website if you're trying to figure out which program is best for you. Another option that we offer is our on-demand program. So these are going to be videos that you follow as you work out at the same time. So if you prefer that workout delivery, or you're not as familiar with exercising, or you're not as familiar with our exercises, that can be a great option as well. We offer that both for pregnancy and for the postpartum period. And so if you want to check out any of our programs, head to the show notes, or we link them down below, and then you can use code YouTube10 to get 10% off all of our online fitness programs, to include our childbirth education course. So thanks for watching. If you want more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified whenever we release new videos. Be sure to like this video and comment below if there's something else that you want us to break down as you're preparing for your birth or recovering in the postpartum period.